It's very rare you get to shoot a so-called epic in London, in the UK, also in my hometown. So it was wonderful, sort of to have this kind of camaraderie on behind camera and in front of camera. It was great. It was great.
Yeah, she was like a mum. She was really nice and kind and playful and stuff. We called each other names. She called me Smellier. I called her Shmush.
Because he asked me to. Just so we're clear. Kind of.
Kind of. And yeah, she didn't seem like an adult. That's a compliment, by the way. That's a compliment. And yeah, she was just like a best friend.
Historically wise, we learned a bit about the Blitz in school. A little bit, not much, if I'm really honest. You spent more time going over like Henry VIII and all that kind of stuff, do you know what I mean? Stuff that doesn't really have anything to do with you, and Oliver Cromwell and all that kind of thing, which is, I found history boring. That side of it, and the more interesting stuff, like the Second World War and the First World War, we never really got to, do you know what I mean? So basically, and this is kind of my knowledge of and how it came together, was I used to watch brilliant films with me nanny. Sunday afternoon matinees and things like that, you know what I mean?
Coming from a musical background, I had to realize that we're dealing with a historical event that happened in the 40s, and so it wasn't a joke. It's something that was an experience that was atrocious. People put their lives on the line for the safety of others. And so I had to be selfless and go in there and think about the very character who is a real character, and forget about myself and think about what life could have been in the 40s. It was a huge challenge, but hopefully I managed to do a good enough job.
Well, that was so important. The accuracy was so important. So we did a lot of research with the Imperial War Museum and with a historian called Joshua Levine. Just really getting into the details of things and did a lot of research, because I thought, I don't want to say anything or do anything which is sort of, I'm not interested in sort of bending the truth or stuff. But at the same time, I want to make my movie. And what was beautiful about it, the things I found and I researched was just so amazing that it was like, okay, right, I could construct these narratives in a way to my story. So that was it. So it was actually thrilling to sort of have those sort of things at my disposal to tell my story, for sure.
Collaborating with Steve was like an experience I've never had before. I felt like he really encouraged myself and all the other actors to be quite heavily involved creatively from the beginning, and almost wanted to shape the story and the characters around who we were as individuals. So like there were conversations that I was having with him from the off about, my own personal history, my relationship with my mother, that he was sort of inspired by, and then would incorporate that somehow into the story, which just meant that I had something that I could really connect to. And throughout the whole experience, we've had a really kind of open dialogue and what he was trying to make, and he wanted me to be involved in that, which was really wonderful. So I just to work with a director who has such a respect for our craft in particular and will at all costs protect that and make us feel like we have a safe space to work in was amazing.
Where I kind of had an understanding of the Blitz, and my concept of that time period and everything was all those classic black and white films, and that look of London and that kind of, cool, blimey, governor, what are we going to do about this war then? That kind of image, do you know what I mean? And that was my idea of the Blitz, really, basically. And then as you get a bit older, you kind of hear stories and, you see more documentaries and things about how it affected people and what it was really like. But in the initial stages, it was more kind of brought up on them. Yeah, I'm going to be honest, and that's what attracted me to this film as well. That kind of classic black and white films of that kind of era. Do you know what I mean? That were on a Sunday afternoon that I used to watch with my nanny, and my aim was to try and incorporate some of those elements of those films that I'd watched within my performance. Do you know what I mean? So it was kind of trying to marry them two things, the reality and the truth, and the experience of what the characters were going to, which Steve does so beautifully, but then also kind of those historical films that I'd watched and trying to pepper the performance slightly with them.
I wasn't very much familiar with the history of the Blitz, because at school we learned mostly about World War I, World War II, a bit of Dunkirk, and a bit of Ho Chi Minh and American history. But I had the privilege of meeting Josh Levine, who gave me certain books to read about the Blitz. So I read a lot about it before I went on set at Hull and in London to perform. It really helped me because it made me feel that I wasn't acting. I had to put myself in a place to reimagine, and Steve worked with me as well to make sure that I understood what people went through during that time.
I think if there ever was a challenge, it was about the sort of epic quality and the sort of more intimate quality. So the going from one to the other, sort of shape shifting as you went along, and to remind oneself that the intimate scenes are as important as the sort of large set pieces. So again, it's like jumping into a hot bath and a cold bath, but at the same time having to sort of keep your composure.
Favorite part was probably the flood. I never wanted to get out the water. My chaperone was like, I need to get out the water. And I was like, no, I don't want to get out the water. It's nice in here.
Was it warm?
Yeah, it was nice and warm. I had a wetsuit on, which
Yeah.
made it more warm. But the wetsuit wasn't nice when you weren't in the water.
No, you can't move in it.
It's terrible.
It's damp. And you, did you have to dive as well? Did you have to go like quite deep under the water?
I did, because I get like
Yeah.
blasted back, and then I went. I didn't launch myself backwards. The water just went.
Yeah.
I went quite deep, and the stunt people were so to save me, in case.
They're the most fun, do you not think?
Yeah.
The stunt people are
Some
always
people are
the
really
most fun.
nice. All
Yeah.
the stunt people are real nice.
Yeah.
I was just under, and then they'd be like, ooh.
Yeah, I remember coming in, I think the next day, and everyone was so impressed at how you handled that. Like an action hero.
Yeah, and there were all the jets and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like.
The song, which is called Winter's Coat, which Saoirse sings in the factory for the musicians' workers. She's a factory, she works in a munitions factory, was inspired by my father, who, when he died, I was given his winter coat. And I love the idea of the intimacy about it, the sort of sensualness about it, the tactile quality of putting something on and having this person sort of engulf you, sort of embrace you as a coat. So I thought that could be a very sort of beautiful sort of idea for a song. So myself and Nicholas Patel, we started to write it in Abbey Road, and Nicholas's frequent collaborator, Torres Stinson, added additional lyrics, which sort of tied the song in a bow, beautiful bow.
To really dive into that, how it affected people with Steve, we did a lot of research. Steve's meticulous at his research, and he sent me a beautiful book to look at, and then with my voice coach as well, we looked into a lot of stuff, and I started to watch a lot of documentaries and how it affected people at the time. So I tried to carry that kind of knowledge into the performance, and then try and base it. To me, it was very kind of there's a twisted paradox, I think, about a film, personally, from my perspective. It's kind of like a fairy tale of a boy trying to get back to his mum, which in elements, initially in the script there was an element of Pinocchio about it. And these wonderful characters he meets and he experiences along his way to get back home to his mum. And, it's the harsh reality of these people that he's meeting. It's the adventure of a young boy trying to get home and these different characters that he meets on his way.
Steve McQueen is a genius, and he's an artist who knows what he wants. Some directors don't, other directors do, and he's like incredible. I remember one occasion where he came up to me and whispered in my ears certain directions. In a whole room filled with at least 200 people, he whispered in my ears and told me that I should relax and that I should channel people like my father. And that alone was sometimes enough for me to get to that place that he wanted me to get at.
Wonderful. Jack and Joanne and Adam Stockhausen was fantastic. I mean, again, these are the best of their field. I think what was exciting for me was how they responded in a very excited way about this period. Again, it's something which has been done before, so obviously making films about this particular period, but they had a different take on it. And I suppose, in a way, this particular way of looking at this period has never been done before in a larger scale like this, so they had lots to play with, and I think they were very excited.
The connection that we found, it came about pretty organically. I think we were really lucky that we got on straight away. I didn't want him to feel that he was working with someone that was like separate from him in any way. And I know the people that I worked with when I was young, who I responded to the most and who I still think of so fondly now, were the ones that didn't really look at somebody's age, and I was just I was a co-worker essentially, and that's how it felt with myself and Elliot. I think it was really important that, because it's Elliot's movie and we all had to be there to support that character, this role that he had been given, making you feel like you could do anything. So I think because that was my main focus, I think that helped also to solidify the mother-child relationship too, because I always just had my eye on him.
His fairy godmother or his archangel who's trying to help him and guide him and help him get back home. And then he meets the likes of the wolf or, different characters like that, and the young boys who he meets as well, who he kind of befriends. And it's his little rites of passage, that journey. He grows up quite a lot through that short space of time, do you know what I mean? And our aim was to play it as truthfully as possible and as realistic as possible, with still kind of having that element of fantasy. I felt that's what I felt. It was really, that's where we were going with it. And I think that was Steve's aim as well, a lot at the time through it.
Elliot Hefman is a great human being. He's a very beautiful child. And he pushed me a lot, in the sense that he made it very natural for me to work with him. I can only, imagine what lies ahead of him. He's a very hard worker and a natural.
I had been a war artist in 2003. In the UK, we have a thing called the war artist, which is very strange. But I was in Basra and Baghdad, and at that moment, I just thought, what would have happened at home in London in 1940? And I was doing some research on another project, and I saw this picture of this boy, this young black child with a large overcoat, a very large overcoat, big suitcase and a cap, waiting on the station. And kind of that was my in. I thought, he is my in, seeing the war through a child's eyes. Because going back to being the war artist, as a civilian as such, when do you ever get a chance to go to war? That's never a case of that, or want to go to war even. So therefore, being in that environment really stirred me to want to do something about what was like in 1940.
It was surreal in those moments with Paul Weller where you had to sing, and especially when you had to sing and he was just playing the piano for you. Like, that was just wild, and kind of felt like this isn't how it should be. You're the rock star. But he was so modest, and I think you would forget pretty quickly that he was this like unbelievably iconic musician, and he was so pleased to be there, but it was something that he had never done before. I don't think he'd ever acted in anything, so he really wanted to learn, he really wanted to improve, and I was able to be there for him, and you were as well. And then he was great with us when it came to us attempting to do what he does. But yeah, it was a really lovely mix of people who had come from so many different backgrounds, like having musicians like Benjamin and Celeste and Paul who are also just really incredible performers, was just made it all more interesting, I think.
There's a beautiful joy that he's extremely meticulous, like I've said, extremely meticulous, and he kind of knows the world, and he fills you full of this history and this knowledge, and we have deep conversations about character, and then he just lets you play. It's really gorgeous, do you know what I mean? He just allows you to find the freedom and find the truth within the scene.
There's a scene in the movie where I had a monologue to address certain prejudice in one of the shelters. And this is actually an actual event that happens in Ita Penyon's time, the character I embodied. This monologue, I felt and I feel now, was very vital, and is very vital to the times we live in right now. And so, performing that scene was as if I was given the opportunity to say my last words before perhaps I die. And that moment will never be forgotten, from my perspective at least.
Well, that was fun, because you're talking about people doing things that they have never done before. So when you've got an actor who's never done something before, they're up for it often, because it's the exploration. And when you sort of give them the details of the history of the character, or what they could have gone through, and what happened to them, like Stephen Graham, it was incredible to talk to him about his character, for example, who obviously is a slightly damaged character. So again, it's one of those things where working with these great actors. It's extremely encouraging to sort of find out that they still want to explore, even if it's a small role. And again, Harry Dickinson again with the fireman. Again, a small role, but you tell them about the history of it, and they sort of something clicks in their brain.
I hope people just firstly, they enjoy the movie, and secondly, they kind of just figure out that we're all equal, and when someone in a situation of war, in a situation of war, we should all work together, be strong, and we're all equal, I guess. We're all the same.
Yeah.
We're no different from each other.
he has a wonderful way of making it very playful, especially, you know, because we had young Elliot on set as well. So we were mindful of trying to make him feel as real as possible, but also, you know, when you say cut, it's Stephen being Stephen. But in that same respect, trying to grab hold of Elliot while he's in that moment and really push him, do you know what I mean, and play with him and push him to the edge in many ways, so he believes the reality of what's happening within the scene. And that's the kind of thing that Steve creates beautifully. He really sets a playground for you as an actor to find the truth in the scene and to find the truth in every moment. Yeah, and he doesn't give you lots and lots and lots of notes at all. He doesn't. He allows you to find it and find it as a collective, and then he'll give you one little pointing. He'll point you in one direction, and you'll go with that, and then it completely changes and transforms. Yeah, he was wonderful to work with.
It was great. It was raining, as usual, but cold. But overall, I felt proud. I felt proud that, you know, about how people stood, you know, at the face of peril, and how resilient people were at the face of calamity. That just the being in certain scenes made me reflect and ponder and become eventually proud. I'm not a nationalist, but certain places, like when we were in shelter, made me really think about what people before me did so that I can be here.
I hope that they find it enjoyable and entertaining, but at the same time, you know, it's not trying to make a party political broadcast or anything like that, but it's just saying, look, this is the truth of and the harsh reality of what these people went through. May we remind ourselves that we never wish to go through this again, not just as a society, but as a race, I think, personally, and it's very poignant for today.
Well, Saoirse is obviously an amazing actress, an extraordinarily amazing actress, and you know, and the main thing about Saoirse was, could she sing? And that was, oh my God, could she sing? And then of course she was able to sing like a bird, because in the picture she plays Rita, who's a munitions worker, but also she's a sort of she's a singer, and she was saying like amazing. So I was just extraordinarily happy. Saoirse, and you can sing, bloody hell, what can't you do? And then we had Elliot, who Elliot was interesting because he never had acted before in his life, and he auditioned. He was 8 years old. I saw this kid. I thought, this guy could have something, and that was it. We helped him. We worked with him, and yeah, he just flowered into this amazing sort of character, George. And I think the chemistry happened also because, listen, Saoirse started acting when she was 9 years old. Elliot, who plays George, was obviously 9 years old when he played the character. So there was, I think, you know, Saoirse took him under her wing in a way, and it was a real affection. It was a real kind of bond and a real understanding. It was very beautiful. It was palpable, and she was looking after him, and he was, you know, wonderful in the way of how he responded to her. So it was great. It's wonderful chemistry.
Singing? I mean, I'd sung before, but I didn't really like singing. I mean, in front of people and stuff. I mean, singing in Abbey Road with Paul Weller is something not a lot of people can say they've done. And I mean, the singing part of it definitely wasn't my favorite part. It wasn't horrible, but I didn't like it as much.
You were really good though.
We filmed in a snooker hall, and it was steeped in history because the snooker cues on the walls were not props, but they were actually real snooker cues that were in cases. And what Steve told me, the history of the place and what he'd found out from the people that managed it and ran it, was those snooker cues were the cues of men who'd gone to war. And so they left their snooker cues there for them for when they came back. Do you know what I mean? So the beauty of that, the tragedy, the kind of, the duality of it, if you may, was that these snooker cues were in that hall and you could see all of these snooker cues and they were all men who never came back from the war. Which made it tangible. Do you know what I mean? And I just think that that's the beauty of Steve. Details like that which an audience would never be conscious of, but as an actor and as a collective crew, we're aware of that. Do you know what I mean? So there was something special about that, I think.
I hope people, global people, around the world, take time to reflect. After watching this movie, I want them to get inspired to help each other, to care for their children, to be hopeful, but also to act upon your hope, to act upon your love, to act upon obvious resilience as humans at the face of disasters. I want them to believe that they can achieve every possibility to bring peace.